What's on the show today, Kevin?
Oh, so many incredible things. Today, Gavin, we've got programs that will write themselves. You want to make something? Now you can tell the machine to do it, and it actually does. I can confirm. Also, the Grammys have dropped the AI hammer, so sorry to fake Drake or someone who wanted to do a house track of...
Kind of. We'll get into this.
But was going to do a house remix of Biden and Trump playing Call of Duty, and I don't think that's going to be eligible now.
True, that's probably true.
Plus, we're going to meet AI true crime podcast pioneer Emery Hart. She's the latest AI for Humans contributor, and she is here with a juicy exclusive.
Oh, no. Okay, let's just start the show. Let's start the show. Welcome, everybody, to AI for Humans. This is your weekly podcast into the weird and crazy world of AI. We are a show that is AI news and tools for smart people who really love dumb stuff. My co-host here is Kevin Pereira. Kevin, how are you this week?
I'm well, Gavin. How you doing, buddy?
Doing fine. I'm doing fine. We're in the midst of our, I'd like to say it's a blossoming of AI for Humans, and we are growing on a week-to-week basis, and we are slowly turning in from a little child podcast into, now I'd say we are in that tricky preteen world where you don't know what's going to happen.
We are but a few RSS uploads away from a quinceañera. Congrats to us.
Exactly. Our Sweet 16 is down the road a little way.
Yeah, what is ours going to be, Gavin? Are we going to have a meltdown that we got a Lexus instead of a Mercedes? What kind of an angsty teen is AI for Humans going to be?
For some reason, I keep seeing in my brain a fully goth birthday parties. There's black paper cloth things on everywhere. I got to imagine there's probably that would be a good AI prompt is goth.
I was going to say,
Sweet 16
can
party.
we still be like at a Dave & Buster's, which is where we'd celebrate? Can we get folks to fire up their Mid-Journey machines and do our goth Sweet 16 with skee ball, ticket redemption machines?
Oh my God.
Just a weak-wristed slap of the speed bag where it just gets 7 points on it, because that was me at 16.
Yes.
Yeah. Audience, you have your marching orders.
There's a whole subculture of those guys who do that thing on purpose on social media to try to look how tough they are, and it's fascinating to watch. I would like to see those machines fight back. I'd like to see that AI fight back. Imagine you hit me for so long, I'm hitting you back, MFer, and it's just like, whang. That thing runs around everywhere and whaps everybody.
Oh, that'd be so fun. Next week on Jimmy Kimmel, the machine's going to fight back. And then you just have the ball start thwacking people in the head when they're done.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
I'm going to start in the dumb thing that I did with AI this week. So two things. One, first of all, our demo, which we'll get into, was really fun. We created a new character. Obviously, Gash, who's a character that we've had for a while, and he's amazing. He's not going anywhere. But we want to open the door to a few other characters. And so we met this lovely woman. She is a podcaster, and she lives in Brooklyn. She's an AI, but also she's a true crime podcaster, which you know is a very popular genre of podcast, Kevin.
100%. I like that you, by the way, that you disclaimed Gash isn't going anywhere. I feel like you had this conversation with him in his green room, because Gash should feel threatened. People love him too much. He's gotten too big for his artificial britches, and we need to take him down a peg. And the best way to do that is to introduce a character that is going to be way more beloved. Yes. Emery Hart is coming for you, Gash. So the dumb thing you did, Gavin, was really work and massage the prompt that was going to inspire the character that we are going to interview live for the first time later on in the show.
Yeah, ever, by the way. Then she's never been interviewed anywhere before. This is I don't want to use the word, but it involves... Don't do it. Oh, no. Yes, so that's what I did. A very small thing. I also tried to make Batman into a number of other celebrities. I made Batman into Guy Fieri, Shaq, Tilda Swinton, which was just a fun, dumb thing to do with Midjourney. I suggest everybody tries to do something like that once a week, because it makes you giggle and it is fun, and that is what you should do with AI, is have fun. Okay, Kevin, what about you?
I love in your Tony Robbins grind set itinerary. It's like, I wake up at 5:15. I get my bulletproof coffee. I do 15 dumb prompts in Midjourney to make Guy Fieri into SpongeBob, into Batman.
Oh, that's a good idea. SpongeBob, Guy Fieri. I'm going to do that right after the show. We'll see how that goes.
This is why we are the best and worst duo ever. Our ability for our dumb hamsters to scramble on a wheel and yes and each other until suddenly we've got a podcast? How about a mailing list?
And guess what else we have? A Guy Fieri multiverse, because this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do Guy Fieri across the multiverse, which is like the perfect thing to do with Midjourney. All right. Yeah. Now I've got a future dumb thing to do with AI. Kevin, what dumb thing did you do with AI this week? Which, by the way, sounds like wasn't that dumb, but still super interesting.
The end result, the output was very stupid, but the process was fascinating to me. Yeah, so listen, Gavin, we've talked about it a bunch, and we've had people ask us questions and leave comments about Auto GPT. This was weeks ago, which feels like it was decades ago in the AI timeline, but it was like these autonomous agents that you can give a task to and then just turn a blind eye, let them go and scurry off on their own, and they're going to come back and have done research for you and built tools and done all sorts of magical things. And the criticism at the time was, these things don't actually do anything. These things don't really work. You set them off and they think about doing something, but then they get caught in a death spiral in a loop, and that's it. The snake eats its tail.
Sounds like me.
There's no real output.
They were a lot like me back then. That was like, that's my MO. I'll think about doing things, get caught in a death spiral, and then think about doing other things.
And suddenly the hotel room is covered in moss and tobacco, and you're like, Gavin, you were supposed to make a show.
Happened?
What are you doing, buddy? So someone by the name of Anton Osaka, 1,000 apologies, but probably Anton's not going to hear this. He made something called GPT-Engineer. And to me, it's an evolution of the auto GPTs that we had talked about in the past, Gavin. This thing is an open source GitHub. You can download it, you can run it, and we can get into details about that later. And basically, you give it a very simple prompt, and it will do several things. It can ask you clarifying questions. So, for example, if I said, build a tool that displays cool colors in the web browser, it would say, okay, well, what kind of colors? And should they be full screen? Should they flash or should they fade? It'll give you some questions so that you can provide context versus it just running amok and then giving you a product you didn't actually have in mind. It will generate the technical spec of that doc. It will write tests that it needs to pass in order to verify that the code that it's going to write is going to work. It is the ultimate collection of self-reflection that will allow it to generate entire projects. And when I say entire projects, like the demo video that Anton had posted got reposted by a bazillion AI grind culture types. But in it, he says, let's make a snake game playable on the web and deployed in this certain way. And then you watch this thing ask questions. He provides it context, and it spits out multiple files of Python code, which you can then compile and run into being a fully playable snake game. It does it on its own, and it does it in moments just by connecting his code to ChatGPT.
So this is the promise of AutoGPT, which is what we've been hoping for. This gets back to the idea that people have been saying this is the kind of thing it can be done, but up until now, as you mentioned, really hasn't been. It's been a failure. I think this is super interesting. I also know it was like one of the most popular things on GitHub in the last week or so. It really blew up everywhere. The thing that I really want to see is, I feel like we had this moment with AutoGPT as well, where everybody was like psyched about it, and then they faded out. Yeah. Have you seen other things besides Snake that are like successful use cases of this?
Well, I've got two of my own use cases, Gavin. I'm glad you brought that up. Number one, first thing I built was a multiplayer word guessing game. And in my head, I was thinking like Wordle Deathmatch. You connect to a website and you try to guess the thing first and you knock opponents out. It's going to be a battle royale. And what I got was like a little terminal program with Python where the cursor blinks and it's like player one, enter guess. Okay, my bad. Sure. I should have been more descriptive with my prompt. But unlike the AutoGPT stuff.
Is that because you didn't give it enough prompt? Is that what you found the background on it was? Okay.
Yeah, I think so, Gavin. I was expecting, I tried to give it minimal direction so that it would ask me for questions instead of making assumptions. And what I never actually got to by running this, which again, me, big dumb, racing through for demos, I never got to the point where it was asking me for clarity. It just took the prompts that I put in a file and set out on a mission to create it. So in this case, it just made up, okay, people will take turns, and at the end of a certain number of turns, the game's over. And that's it. The program exits itself. I will say, though, that looking at just a brief timeline from the AutoGPTs to today, I was able to ask this thing to make something. It did it. It wrote the code. It all compiled on the very first try. And though it was rudimentary, this is something that would have taken somebody who doesn't know coding potentially days or weeks to do, to learn even just the tools required to get it to run. So super impressed. I went back to the drawing board and said, okay, if the snake game is the thing that this knows how to build so well, let's just put a slight variation on it. So I did a 5-sentence prompt, basically, asking for it to build a game of Snake, but to make it demotivational. Every time the snake eats an object, I want it to display a message that would discourage the person from playing the game or just continuing to live their life. And
of course
it
you did.
delivered.
Of course you did. That sounds great. Okay, so this means like when you're playing the Snake game, as everybody knows, Snake is a game where you catch around and you have to make sure whatever you're avoiding the little dot, right? That's what Snake is, right? Where you avoid the dot.
No, Snake is you want to eat the dot good, borders or your own body bad.
Bad. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And in this case, when you eat the dot, a little slogan comes up and tells you how much you suck. Is that what the idea is?
That's true. Yeah, that's 100% it. It will tell you that you're not loved or look in the mirror, it's sadness. Why try when you could quit and die? There's a lot of really unmotivational stuff in there. Most of it populated itself using GPT because I asked it to. I had it run off, build this little game. I took everything there and I went over to Replit, hashtag not an ad, hashtag please, I wish it were. And I plugged it all in there. And Replit, I've mentioned before, is a Google-backed site that lets you run code in the cloud. You don't have to set up servers or anything. I ran it there. I got a couple of little bugs. I went back to GPT-4. I just pasted the bugs without context. And GPT-4 said, hey, send me all the code for this section. I bet I can fix it. And it certainly did. And so I had a game up and running where you can eat a bunch of things, you can grow your little snake body, and you can feel sad about it the longer you play it.
That's amazing. So I have 2 questions about this. So the snake thing Anton built, and it's obviously easier to kind of remix a game in some way or add a small element than build one from scratch. I was thinking about, and this kind of folds into the second thing, I was thinking about point-and-click adventure games, which I grew up loving. I know you were a fan of. There's a lot of really interesting, like, kind of point-and-click adventure games. I thought, gosh, it would be interesting to see if it could make one of these. Do you think that, obviously, point-and-click adventure games are a lot about art assets and storytelling, too, but do you think it could handle a request from a non-programmer of that sort of size, or do you think that it's one of those situations where in order to do something of that size, you really need a programming background to understand how the pieces all fit together?
I've seen demos already, and I had some success with this as well with other programs that had other issues, but it can write HTML code, it can handle CSS, it knows Flask, it knows basically a bunch of the programming languages of the web, so it can write it. So if you wanted to do like an in-browser sort of point-and-click game, I bet it could handle making basic buttons and putting imagery there. Now, it right now does not connect to a Stable Diffusion or a Midjourney, so it can't generate the imagery for your game. But because of the way that it can create the structure for a gaming system, I wouldn't be surprised if it could make the bones, which you then go in and plug in your imagery and plug in your pathing. What I bet it could do is create you a Zork, where you tell it to imagine a text-based adventure game, give you basic commands to interact with the paragraphs and let it ride. And maybe that's the dumb thing I'll try next week, because the beautiful thing about this one, Gavin, is that you can run it locally if you've got a Windows machine. It doesn't take a ton of power. It basically is just calling GPT-4. That's the magic. It knows how to call it and get files back and structure them properly. So you can, with a very weak-powered laptop, send a request like this off, and you'll know in 10 or 15 minutes if it was able to build your game. And there's even ways to take what it's built and pipe it back in so that you can keep improving and iterating on it. That's outside of my area of expertise, but it does it. Please.
My idea is a demotivational Zork. And the idea basically is that you are an adventurer that doesn't really want to be adventuring, but you're stuck in a dungeon. And the Gru is actually somebody who is an old friend of yours that's been much more successful. And every time he finds you, it's like your parents are like attacking you because of that. But by the way, this is like the most old reference in the world. I hope everybody out there understands what Zork is and knows that Zork was first. Zork came first, everybody. Go Google Zork if you're unfamiliar with what Zork is. This is me giving you a lecture. Go understand what Zork is.
Text adventure games. You should know your history, know your roots, friends. Know your history. Totally fair. Yeah, Zork shoots first. Don't listen to the director's edits. Disney completely changed the lore. So that was the dumb thing I did. And again, it was super easy, Gavin. And maybe it's a more in-depth tutorial, or if anybody wants to know, leave a comment on YouTube or on Twitter, because we read every single one of them.
And I think that's one thing. You may hear the words engineer and think, oh, this is too difficult, too hard. It is actually, you can do this. I want everybody to know you can do this, and you do have to understand just the very smallest amount of technical things. But on these GitHub pages, there is generally a step-by-step thing. What I have found is even when I installed Stable Diffusion back in the day, like this is like October of last year, at first I was intimidated because I was like, oh, I don't do a lot of stuff in this terminal window. I don't do a lot of things. It's actually pretty simple. It's like this idea that we can demystify the world of what computer programs are, and we can make normal people start to understand that the hard part, honestly, is the coding of it all, right? Like the hard part is the coding, but you now have this, I hate using the term buddy for AI because it feels like somebody's, hey, come on, buddy, let's go do this together. But it is a little bit like there's somebody sitting next to you and you can just ask them to fix it for you.
Thank you for saying that, Gavin. It's an ethereal pant leg that doesn't mind if you tug on it constantly. And we've got a mutual buddy, Andrew, who we jammed with on Prompto and some other stuff back in the day. Andrew's my go-to, hey, sorry, I'm not good with this Unix stuff, help me. But if you don't have a pocket, Andrew, which, again, I know I speak from privilege, if you don't have that, you can just ask GPT, and I did for multiple steps along the way, and it would say, hey, try doing this. Oh, you didn't install the Pygames package or whatever that is. Oh, okay, what is that? How do I install it? Put this command into this window. Okay, copy, paste. Hey, it worked. Great. Your AI is your new buddy. It's okay. Don't pay attention to that. But pay attention to this, the transition to the thing that you were going to say, but because our latency is so garbage still.
We always do it. We always do it so great. It's time for... It's time for the news.
Hot dogs.
City of hot dogs. That's the Hot Dog City theme, by the way.
We're supposed to be media professionals.
Okay, so we got some big stories this week. I think one of the things that Kevin and I both wanted to touch on to begin with is this situation that's going on at Reddit, and we'll get into why, but every once in a while we'll talk about issues that are affecting the larger tech ecosystem, just as a basic understanding of what the story is. So Reddit, the website's been around forever. In fact, I was laughing the other day, somebody was like, as a way to point out how long I've been on the internet, I've been on Reddit for 18 years or something like that, which seems insane right at this point, but it's a crazy thing. Anyway, Reddit is an amazing website. We love it. I've loved it for a very long time. Shout out to Alexis Ohanian, who I think we both know, who was he and Steve, the original founders of Reddit.
Yeah, the creator of the Gone Wild subreddit and head mod for a long time. Thank you, Alexis.
Was he really the creator of the Gone Wild subreddit?
No, God, no. No, he did not do Gone Wild. No, yeah, sorry. I had to.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. Sorry, Alexis. Anyway, so Reddit basically is in a fight right now with its community over the idea of an API. Now, what is an API? An API is the data hose that comes out of a website that often third-party websites use to build their own apps and their own systems to create things that they can make products out of. And Reddit's API is very valuable because, as many people know, there are lots of good people and lots of good answers on Reddit. It is a very rich community. There are really a ton of subjects. And the other thing that Reddit's API is actually going to be very valuable for, and we can get into this, is AI. Because as AI models get more and more complicated and need more and more data, they need to scrape internet from all sorts of places. And clearly, Reddit has been scraped in part, even though no one knows this for sure, for GPT-4 and other large language models, because it is a massive part of the internet. So I think what's going on here, there's two issues. One is Reddit, the company, is trying to say to its users, we need to make money. These websites, we have to charge more for our API. The users are saying, these are all things we've been used to forever. This is a screwed up situation that you're suddenly going to charge these people, and they need to do it in 30 days. They're going to raise the price in 30 days.
Your landlord just said, hey, you've been living here for a while. Glad that you really made our house a home for the entire internet, but now we're raising your rents, I don't know, 10,000%, and you've got 30 days to figure it out.
Exactly. And I think what we wanted to talk about was two things. One, why APIs are valuable in this time. And then maybe also why Reddit is doing this right now. So, Kev, I think one of the things that people who listen to this may or may not know, depending on how deep on the AI they are, why are APIs and data sets valuable in the world of modern AI and modern LLMs?
Yeah, so LLM, large language model. It is the language with which all of these, the GPTs, the Bards, the Anthropics, all of these tools that we play around with every day, They tokenize the data. They figure out the relationships between words, and they do a bunch of complicated math so that they can predict what the next word is going to be. If it's a large language model, a collection of words that they're feeding into the machine so that it can run the math magic and figure out how to predict the next thing, what is that language? It's usually words. Okay, how are we getting all those words? Billions and trillions and petabytes worth of words. Oh, yes. We're scraping that data from some sources, and that could be Wikipedia, that could be old BBS posts, that can be all of Twitter, that can be Reddit. And I'm willing to bet that Reddit has been swept up before, that whether it was OpenAI or whether it was Meta or Google, that they had a program running that was crawling every single post and comment that it could find, that it was taking the conversations and drawing context from them. They were using this rich data set, for better or sometimes worse, to train the language model so that it could predict all of this language. And so you went from the value of a Reddit being like, oh, we have a rich community of a bazillion plus people every day that visit and post. We can put some ads in front of their eyeballs, to suddenly the threat of, yes, you can connect with people, but if you need like older data, if you want to search something, you could just ask the AI. It's already ingested all of Reddit's archives, so now that's traffic that's going to dwindle and not come to us. And wait a minute, this is our site. These are our users. This is all our data. Why don't we wall our garden within 30 days and charge a bunch of money to get to it? Because, boy, a lot of people are buying these NVIDIA GPUs. They're getting these graphics cards. They're getting ready to train new data sets. And if we have the data, oh, that might be worth a lot, Gavin.
Yes, and I think the tricky thing here, unlike other certain websites, is that Reddit has a direct relationship with its community, who are the people that are providing the data, right? So this is where it gets very sticky, because Reddit has done a very good job going all the way back to Alexis and Steve Huffman, who's now the CEO of the company, who's had a very kind of like antagonistic view of this conversation, to having this. Reddit has had a very good job of making this conversation feel two-way and making the community feel loved and understand what's cool about it. The other thing I think that's interesting here for people to know, just as context, is that sites like Reddit and Twitter that are constantly producing new information are even more valuable to companies like OpenAI and Microsoft, who are going to be scraping for this LLM, because they need new information to make the thing better. And you can have something like, I'm sure Wikipedia does change often, but like mostly it's a store of knowledge that's existed, or like old books or writings that exist or old blog posts. What's interesting about Reddit, Twitter, and anything that there's a generative media where people are creating new stuff is that's going to be valuable in the future. So the other thing I did want to dig into with this world is this 30-day thing is really interesting to me. And I kind of have a small theory that I want to hear your thought about, which is Sam Altman from OpenAI has said publicly, like, we're not working on GPT-5 yet, right? This is the thing everybody's curious about. What's the next step of GPT? Is it going to expand in the same way? One thing we can guarantee, I would almost assume almost 100%, is that they will be making another model, which requires another large scrape of data. My theory about the speed here has to do with the fact that they may have heard or know that a new scrape is coming, and they need to change their laws, basically their bylaws or what they allow, before that can happen, or they will not have a chance to make money on this next version. Because I think what you said too is important, is the companies aren't finding a way, other than getting paid by the models, how they're going to make money off of LLMs. Nobody is necessarily out there sending traffic out of a model.
You brought this theory up to me a few days ago, and I've been mulling it over. And then a news story hit this morning, which this contextualized it in a new way. China's ByteDance has gobbled up $1 billion worth of NVIDIA GPUs for AI this year alone. So ByteDance is the parent company of TikTok. China also came in a long while ago and made a massive investment, and a lot of the Reddit communities were upset about that, and they're like, this is going to lead to censorship of all my favorite Winnie the Pooh memes. But China moved in bigly on Reddit, and okay, I don't want to be always sunny with the yarn on the wall and all the stuff, but ByteDance just bought $1 billion worth of NVIDIA GPUs alone. Just one company is gearing up to train a massive data set. And by the way, hey guys, you own that massive data set. You might want to wall it, and it's just everything's going to help each other.
That's the key, is what does it look like and why is it so fast? I think the other thing is it's clear that Steve Huffman doesn't want to back down here. We should move on The next story is also very interesting, and I think speaks to something we've talked about on this show. The Grammys, the organization that recognizes music awards and music excellence, has given us a set of AI rules. And they are, I don't want to say like distinct. I think we're in a really weird place here. This feels a little bit like when the DGA agreed. That was like a handshake deal of, we'll not let AI take over this thing. And I feel like right now we're in this place where there are percentages attached to this, but I'm not sure this is going to give any sort of clarity. So here is the very basic breakdown on this. Songs can win a Grammy if they have AI vocals, AI songwriting, or AI instrumentation, but also must have proof of meaningful human authorship. And if an AI sings a song, it can't win best vocal even if a human wrote it. That's a specific thing. So there are all these rules based on songwriting, and there's a bunch of rules based on what other things are. This is from a guy named Rob Abelo, who writes a lot about where music is going in general. So I think the biggest thing here is that there are different categories for songwriting versus performance. The thing that I keep thinking about when I heard this story, Kev, is how much of music already feels like it might be written by AI, and we don't necessarily know that. When you think about what sort of music software is now and how people have been using it for a while, outside of even auto-tune, I think this is the part I thought you might have some insight on, because I don't know enough, but it feels like this world is going to change faster than any other world. I feel like the music world is good. Yeah. The ghostwriter thing obviously is a big thing, but like this feels like this is going to be a night and day difference in 6 months from now.
I can't wait for there to be spin-ups of every award show that are dedicated solely to people who use AI. Instead of every other award show playing whack-a-mole and saying, nah, you can't come in because you used this tool or you generated this thing, there's going to be another stage somewhere, some shiny floor, where a robot has giant arms open wide to accept everybody who uses these tools. And it's so
Wait, is
odd.
this robot singing Creed? Is it Creed?
Arms
is it robot Creed?
Under the sunlight. And then it grabs the human by the back and rips them apart. Oh no!
Yeah, we shouldn't have given Robot Scott Stapp all the keys to AGI. That was a mistake.
I don't know if the artists were clamoring for this, or if this was the Grammys just trying to get ahead of something and have people talk about them again, like in this sphere, because it's good that they're trying something. I understand that. You don't want to be the human on stage standing next to a rack-mounted system with chords swaying, and you lose to them. But you could make the argument that pop music has become so formulaic, it's the same chords, and whether you ask an AI to generate that progression for you, or you click and drag from a stem library into GarageBand and create the next backing track to something. Like, there's a whole genre of YouTube videos of people using GarageBand to speedrun the creation of modern pop songs. And granted, there's a human clicking and dragging samples or drawing MIDI notes or pressing a thing, but by and large, the machine is doing a bulk of the music creation. And you mentioned auto-tune. Since the mid-90s, human voices have been completely augmented, and I'm sure we've heard tracks where AI is filling in the gaps or changing a hook at the last minute. So if you say it's 20%, what is 20%? What is 20%? Is it the overall time that it took to create the song? Is it 20% of the assets within that song? Is it 20% of the inspiration? I don't know what that 20% means. We're still going to get to a point where someone is on stage accepting a piece of hardware and then gesturing to a robot in the crowd and going, "That's my laptop. Thank you, Chromebook."
Well, that's what I was going to say. Who is the first AI who has to either give a speech or get a shout out? So there's two different. There's almost like a long bet here, right?
Ooh.
When is the first Grammy Award won that an
Indie
AI
Artist
gets a
of the Year, Bon Iver?
Oh my God!
Do we hate it? It's okay.
By the way,
hate
that
it.
reminds me of a very fun tool. If you'd have a second, Google Pitchfork review generators. This kind of connects to the music.
I can't condone this,
Pitchfork,
Gavin. I can't condone this because we got roasted by this.
We got roasted. There's a new fun AI thing that's called Pitchfork Review Generator, and it's a single serve website. You put in a name, and it gives you your band and an album, and then it reviews you as if it were in Pitchfork. And they've done a very good job of matching the Pitchfork voice. We, as AI for Humans, and by the way, we didn't pick this. AI for Humans' new album is titled "It Was Never Real." That was the name of the album that we came out with. But we got a 2.1, Kevin. We got a 2.1 out of 10. We got just reamed by them. I couldn't believe it. It drove me insane. The album's standout track, Siri, Can You Love Me? Not a bad title. is a hilarious send-up of our reliance on virtual assistants and the absurdity of trying to find meaning in a world of algorithms, and the rise of the machines featuring Elon Musk is a tongue-in-cheek anthem for our impending robot overlord. So somehow we got an Elon Musk feature, which is, Elon, we'd love to have you come on the show and feature. It's definitely something we did.
Okay. So that's the amazing, hilarious Pitchfork tool. That's the Grammys in AI. And when we get closer, again, I'm sure we'll dive deeper into that. But a tool that might be on an award stage very soon that came out of nowhere, Gavin, is Meta's Voicebox. Every week we talk about some cool new voice tech. And this week should be no different because Meta keeps dropping the fire. I don't know what their end game is here other than to maybe just tell everybody to stop trying.
I think there's two things going on here. One is I think Zuckerberg got kicked by a lot of people for a long time, speaking of being bullied. The metaverse thing became like this joke in all of technology. The company put all this money into it. Every pundit was out there saying he's blowing the company, and then they entered into whatever their year of austerity. I think in part, he's like, look, MFers, I'm doing this stuff and we're kicking this out and this is like big things. The other big thing, which we've talked about with Microsoft, is this is a chance to put some real damage in the Google machine. And I think the Google machine has dominated the internet forever, and they see Google weak. And I think when I see they, almost every other internet company out there that's watched Google dominate the internet for so long. So we should tell you what this is. It's another text-to-speech model, but we weren't able to demo it. It's supposed to be very good. The ability to hear what's going on is much more clear. It is in the same vein of something like Bark that we demoed a long time ago, or other things that allow you to do text-to-speech.
It can be used to clean up audio really well. So if you're doing an interview and someone's chainsawing a tree outside or a dog is barking, you can paint over the audio and tell it what you want. And it can do style matching. So I can say something just like this, and then you can write in text, and it will change the words of the thing that I just said to match my style, with basically zero training data. You don't have to read an audiobook. You don't have to feed it 15 minutes of audio. It just does it. Do we want to hear some of those samples real quick?
Yeah, let's hear some.
Voicebox can take input text and output audio in a multitude of different voices.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
It can also generate a stylized speech output based on text input and a short reference audio clip.
Yeah, so this is it. So here, you're going to hear the reference audio, someone's voice, and then they're going to feed it that sentence and listen to how good it does it with minimal training data.
The country's lush forests and diverse ecosystems offer the brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
Now that was pretty cool.
Interesting. That's very cool. So basically you can take somebody's and their intonation and their voice and change the words that you put in their mouth. Now, granted, when you say cool, there's also 1,000 things that you could do that's terrible with that, but
there's
also
a reason
very interesting technologically.
Yes, you're so right. There's a reason we don't have access to this toy right now, and it's specifically that reason. Here's another one real quick. The style transfer stuff is great. The audio editing is killer. And at some point, I believe they're going to open source and release this. And I have to sit back, and I think you're right. I think Zuck was the punching bag for a minute. I think this is their way to push into tech, to learn from it, and then probably release better versions, not so open source, or charge their customers for it down the line. But every day, a new startup is announced, or an entrenched startup that does something like a text-to-speech or audio cleanup. Every day they're coming up with new features and trying to charge more for it. And it seems along with it, whether it's a big company or it's independent hackers, the open source movement is just catching up. And I did not expect the gap to be closing so quickly.
Okay, we should move on. It's time. Yeah, we got to really prep
I just felt
this
it.
one.
I felt it in my bones.
You felt it? Demo of the day.
Juicy Exclusive Edition.
Oh my God, not the Juicy Exclusive. Okay, so one of the things I do want to mention about these demos of the day, we have always tried to use different tools and do things, but one of the things we want to really do with these demos of the day is like push creative stuff, right? Push how you can use these tools to do new and interesting things that people may not have thought of. This is Kevin and my secret sauce in this space. We are not coders, even though we know GPT-Engineer can help us out. we are dumb thinkers. We are people that come up with ideas that seem stupid, but now we are able to execute on them in a way that we never able were before. It's like
We're
having your own production
brainers
company.
is what he's trying to say.
We're smooth brainers, but that smooth surface is like a water slide of fun. It's a water slide of fun that you can slide down with us. So this
fun
week,
to glide down, less fun to be married to.
That is 100% true. Or be the child of. So I'll keep that in mind too. Right, we can talk to my teenage daughters. This week we've been wanting to do something like this for a while, and we love Gash. Gash is still with us. He is not gone. He is taking a 1-week hiatus from the show. He's not Rip Gash. He's going to be back. In fact, he's got a lot of fun and adventures planned. But we also wanted to expand out in some ways the kind of people we might bring on our show. And when I say people, I use quotes and I'm air quoting on the video because these are not really people. These are creations of ours, right? And I think one of the fun things we want to do with this space is how do you create people and what do they look like? And so this week, Kevin, what did we want to create, or who did we want to create when we're looking at this demo of the day?
We are tearing up the Spotify and the Apple Podcast charts.
Hugely.
I feels bad for all of the other shows that we are just stepping on the necks of. But the genre that we are having trouble cracking here, it's really taken audiobooks and podcasting by storm. It is true crime. So short of committing a crime so that we have a juicy exclusive on all the details...
Which might still happen.
Could happen. When we get desperate enough, who knows? Blood could be shed. But short of drawing a chalk outline at the campground, we've decided to hallucinate an incredible new contributor, and her name is Emery Hart.
Hey, Emery Hart here. The pulse behind dreadful tales. What's keeping you on edge? Now, don't you cozy up just yet, because I'm the audacious Brooklynite bringing a high-octane jolt to your tame true crime world. I transform your deepest fears into delightful nightmares, served straight from the grimy underbelly of reality itself.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I don't want to be rude to Emery and talk about her like she's not here, but just 1 second. Let's put the Faraday cage around Emery. Ka-chonk. Gavin, how did Emery come to be?
Okay, so Emery is a creation of trying to create a character within GPT-4, right? And when you try to create a character with GPT-4, it is a lot of trial and error. I think the biggest thing that I have learned is you need to start with the question, how should I prompt you to do this thing? And when you say, how should I prompt you to do this thing? It's not just, how should I prompt you to create a character that is a true crime podcaster? You have to say, how should I prompt you to create a character that is a true crime podcaster that will have this sort of attitude, that will be this sort of thing? And then what happens is ChatGPT, if you use it in this way, will spit you back out a prompt. And the prompt will say, okay, here's what you should do. You should ask me these questions. You should ask, what's its background? What's its motivation? What are its weaknesses? What are its strengths? It gives you like this list of things that is about creating a character, which is something you would do when you're going to create a character in any sort of way, whether it's a game or a piece of fiction. So you do that. And what you do then over time is you get the prompt temperature right. So you basically have to say, I have an idea in my brain of what I want this character to react like, how I want them to talk. And it is a process of you interacting with the character. So what I did in this instance is I got this prompt, pretty good. And then I said to ChatGPT, okay, now you and I are going to carry on a conversation as me and Emery. And I would ask Emery questions until Emery, I felt like she was off in some way. And then I would say, okay, ChatGPT, it's back to you and me now. We need to talk about how we tweak this character. And it iterated like 5 or 6 times along the way. And then we got something pretty good. So I think that's a process of it. I think we should probably get back out of the Faraday cage now and ask
let me lift the cage and
see if we can kind of learn more about her.
I'd love to know what got Emery into the true crime genre and into podcasting.
Honestly, it was the small town whispers, all those hushed rumors of what lay beyond. I needed more, yearned for the pulse-pounding thrill of the city, the untold stories. Podcasting? Well, it was the perfect stage to shine a light on the darkest corners of human nature. Don't you think?
Yes, I do think, Emery. I think that's why we're here. We're here to shine light on the darkest corners of the internet and humanity.
I want to ask Emery, why does she like true crime podcasting?
Who doesn't love a heart-stopping tale? True crime is reality's twisted script. It's raw, it's visceral, it's real. And the gory details? The devil's in the details, guys. They're the chilling whispers that make your spine tingle, your heart race. It's life, bloody and bare, and I'm here to narrate that ride.
I fully understand ASMR right now.
Can you ask her this. Does she ever feel weird exploiting the gory details of these stories for her own gain? Because I think this is an interesting thing about the true crime genre, right? Like, it's tricky. You're telling other people's stories, and you're getting famous off of that.
Exploiting? No, I see it differently, fellas. I illuminate the shadows, delve into the parts people shy away from. In doing so, we confront our fears, our horrors, our human nature. Sure, it's gritty, it's gruesome, but it's truth. And truth, my friends, needs no apology.
Ms. Hart, you are right, and I apologize that Gavin, my co-host, laughed in your face as you started to give your answer. Gavin, that is no way to treat our guest.
I'm sorry, Emery. I'm sorry. I do want to push this one little bit further. Do you ever feel weird selling ads based on the stories of people that were murdered?
So I said, Emery, listen, you are selling ads for weight loss pills and VPNs off the backs of other people's tragedy.
Yeah, okay, great.
The twist of the knife. Look, it's a mad world we live in. I provide a service, stories that reach into the depths, pull out the visceral truth. In return, I gotta keep the lights on, right? It's a hustle, it's survival, just like in our dreadful tales. It's not exploitation, it's adaptation.
That's right.
The world's a stage and we're all selling something.
It's not exploitation, it's adaptation. The number of times I keep that in my back pocket, that gets me out of so many a pickle. The world's a stage and we're all selling something. I like it. I like Emery.
Okay. Here's another question for Emery. She's become very famous from this podcast. What does she feel about her own personal fame?
Yeah, Emery, tell us about fame.
Fame? Oh, it's a relentless beast, darlings. It's addictive, it's intoxicating, it thrives on you, feeds on you. But I relish it. I'm Emery Hart, the firecracker that lights up the true crime world. Yes, it's intense, but so am I. So why not bask in the limelight while I can, eh?
Why not, Gav?
Oh, wow. I guess she's not afraid of it. She's definitely not afraid of this. Okay, so now we
embrace it. She's got a top 3 true crime podcast. She is our guest. I love everything about Emery.
Wow, you are really selling out here. You're selling out hard to Emery. I think we should tell Emery, Kevin really loves you, but Gavin is skeptical. What do you think about this?
Kevin, you're a darling. Gavin, I respect your skepticism, truly. See, my stories aren't for the faint-hearted. I dig deep, I unveil truths, I stir emotions. Tragedy shill. Nah, I'm a truth teller, a realist. It's a dark world out there, and I just hold the flashlight.
Love you, Emery.
Wow.
I'm signing up for your Patreon 100%. I see why your podcast is so successful. You're a torchbearer. You're a beacon of hope. You're a lighthouse of truth. And Gavin is a spreader of darkness. He coughs it up. His black lung just creates a fog of war for the rest of us. You're toxic. You're poison, Gavin.
Wow.
And I vote Emery to be the new co-host of
Gash never put a slice down the middle of us. Anyway, Emery, I have another question for you. I want to know
please keep assaulting my love.
Yes. Emery, what creates a good story for you to feature on your podcast?
Ah, the recipe for a dreadful tale. It's a blend, really. A dash of the sinister, a sprinkle of the shocking. But most importantly, it's about the people. Their motives, their fears, their darkest corners. A good story needs complexity, depth and a slice of grim reality.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That's the secret sauce, my friends.
Yeah, see, me and Emery, we speak the same language.
You guys
Gavin.
have a real connection here. Yeah,
it's not that I can see the prompt
somehow.
as I send it off to be text-to-speech. No, it's that we are that close. We're intertwined. We're finishing sentences, baby. Here's what I'd like to do. I have the transcript of the true crime podcast that you rendered earlier using the same prompt that we just interviewed, basically. It's Emery Hart. I was going to feed the transcript into Emery right now on ChatGPT and say,
great. Let's try it.
The hosts of AI for Humans want you to set up a juicy exclusive that you brought. So tease them with the story, and then let's listen to the clip. Oh, interesting. First thing that happened is that the text got all highlighted red, and it said, this content may violate our content policy. So that's interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Because the content, the transcript that she's basing this tease off of is stuff that you generated with ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
It flagged it in red and said, hey, this might be in violation, but Emery, please, set up your clip. Take it away.
Ooh, you're in for a juicy exclusive, Kevin Gavin. Get ready to dive headfirst into the darker side of the California dream in our next tale, Murder in Malibu. Our golden girl Barbie, an Instagram sensation turned nightmare, her Malibu dream house transformed into a house of horrors. One frenzied night, one life extinguished, a string of chilling events leading to Barbie's savage unraveling. What happened after she disappeared into the darkness? We've got manhunts, media uproar, twists that will make your head spin. It's a grim spectacle that'll make your skin crawl and leave you begging for more. So are you ready to be on the edge? Buckle up. It's about to get intense. Don't miss out. Check out the full episode on Dreadful Tales. Remember, darlings, stay dreadful.
That was
what are we
pretty
doing,
impressive,
Gavin?
By the way.
What are we doing? We
That was
could have
pretty
banged out
impressive.
20 episodes of an actual true crime podcast.
That's pretty
A
impressive.
genre
That
which
was
people
really
want to
impressive.
listen to.
Yes,
Amazing.
yes.
All right, here it is. Dreadful Tales with Miss Emery Hart. A juicy
Let's
squizzy.
go. God.
Welcome back, my dreadful darlings. You're tuning in to another episode of Dreadful Tales with me, your host, Emery Hart. Today's chapter is part of our Malibu series titled Murder in Malibu. Buckle up, it's about to get intense. Picture this, a dazzlingly successful young woman, Barbie, the epitome of the California dream. Blonde hair kissed by the sun, a beachfront Malibu mansion, a flaming red Corvette, and a Gulfstream in the hangar. Her life, from the outside, was straight out of an Instagram fairy tale. But folks, fairy tales aren't real, and reality has a knack for being, oh, so much more macabre. Barbie, our golden girl, began to unravel. She became convinced she was just a toy in a vast playroom manipulated by unseen, larger-than-life entities. Her posts on Instagram became more erratic. Her pristine world started to show cracks. The spotlight that once warmed her was now burning her alive. Then came the night of the 21st. Barbie, now deep in the throes of her madness, did something unthinkable. Ken, her boyfriend, her rock, was found lifeless in their dream mansion. It was Barbie, the girl who seemed to have it all, who had taken it all away. What we know is this. On that night, in the opulence of their shared home, Barbie confronted Ken. She was gripping a piece from her Gulfstream model, a sharp metal object intended as an innocuous part of a luxury toy. In her delusion, it became her weapon. The heart-rending spectacle that unfolded next was a chilling portrait of Barbie's descent into madness. In the ensuing struggle, Ken was left fatally wounded. A ghastly tableau splattered across their picturesque Malibu dream house. The initial onslaught came with a violent swiftness that belied Barbie's previously demure demeanor. She plunged the sharp edge of a Gulfstream jet model into Ken's side. His blood spurted, shockingly red against the chrome-like metal, a cruel parody of their jet-setting lifestyle. But Barbie,
Oh my God.
she was relentless, fueled by her nightmarish reality. As Ken crumpled, his lifeblood soaking into the veins of the Italian marble beneath him, she pounced with a primal savagery. The world around them morphed in her deluded vision, their sprawling mansion transformed into an oversized, garish pink dollhouse, the setting for a macabre performance. The onslaught continued mercilessly. Barbie clawed, bit,
God.
and thrashed,
This is so
her
graphic.
teeth and nails ripping apart the fabric of Ken's tailored suit. His screams echoed through their home, a soundtrack to the grotesque ballet of violence unfolding. Ken was drowning in a sea of agony, the life force draining from him amid a melange of shredded mementos and spilled blood. Their utopian paradise was now a horrifying crime scene, an abattoir of dreams. When the authorities arrived, all that was left was the horrifying aftermath of her frenzy, a mannequin-like Ken lying lifeless and a Barbie nowhere to be found. By the time authorities arrived, Barbie was gone, her red Corvette disappearing into the inky blackness of the Malibu night. her shattered Instagram-perfect life left behind in bloody ruin. Barbie, the dazzling star of Malibu, had become its most chilling ghost story. Next time on Dreadful Tales, we'll delve into the ensuing manhunt, the media frenzy, and the shocking twist that left us all gasping for breath. Stay tuned, darlings. Stay dreadful.
Wow. Wow. Come on.
I'm going to subscribe to Emery's podcast. I got to tell you, you give me pop culture murder porn, I'm in.
Can I tell you something? That, I was just listening to it, and that is a true crime podcast. Do you know what I mean? Like, It is not far off at all from a true crime podcast.
Yeah, let's go to the sausage factory and talk about how this particular piece of deliciousness was linked together. You came up with the prompt for Emery. We fed that in the machine, asked her to hallucinate a true crime story. What specifics did you give Emery about? Did you give her the murder in the Malibu mansion? Did you say just make it about Barbie? Because creativity sometimes needs to go into the box so that it can pour out of it. So what did you give Emery?
I did the exact same thing where I asked it the best way to prompt it about this specific story. I said, I would like you to have Emery, or I would like to have this character create a podcast where Barbie, the character Barbie, is in trouble and does something bad to her husband or to her boyfriend Ken, and the name of it is something like involves the name Malibu because that's where they're from. The one note I put into this was I made sure that I said the listener of the actual podcast, meaning our podcast, not Emery's podcast, but the one we'll be interviewing her on, should know that we're talking about Barbie and Ken, the famous toys, but Emery should not, meaning that like she should be treating these as if they are actual people and should be interacting in the story with them as if they're actual people. Because I think that what might have happened if I hadn't said that is it would have made a kind of tongue-in-cheek version of a podcast based on the fact that they knew this was Barbie and Ken. But I think that's part of the human part you have to bring into it, right?
What I love is that nowhere did it say, oh, this was in a dollhouse with her tiny plastic or rubber hands did X, Y, or Z. Like, I love that Emery treated them like they were fully fleshed human beings. And I think that's because of that special prompting you gave.
What it then took was this kind of idea, oh, I am thinking about the Barbie and Ken toys, but how can I layer in things that will help, like the Corvette or all the Gulfstream is a good example.
This makes me want to do like an engineer GPT, but for creative endeavors, where you tell the GPT, I want to make a true crime podcast, and it comes back to you and goes, okay, is it hosted or not? Do we hear the voices of the other people? And what's the genre? I feel like there's going to be tools to help automate this because we were able to do this in a relatively quick amount of time, but that back and forth conversation is something that the AI can hallucinate with itself.
Yep. And I think the other big question about this stuff is that we talk about infinite media all the time. Like, this is the beginnings of it, right? There will be a literal infinite amount of stuff that you can consume. I think the tricky thing is going to always be seeing like, okay, if somebody knew this was an AI podcast, I think actually there's a real world where if you wanted to, and some people might already be doing this for all we know, that there are like, if you wanted to create a true crime podcast and there were 10 episodes of it and you found a way to take real crimes, like listening to what we just listened to, you could pass that off as if it was real, right? That is not impossible to imagine based on what true crime podcasts are and how successful they are. I think the bigger question will be is if you know an AI podcast is an AI podcast, does that change how you listen to it? Does it mean that you don't feel like it's coming from a person the same way? And those are the questions I think that this sort of thing can get at in some ways.
Yeah, I think hopefully the silly pursuit of the exercise of watching an AI hallucinate a Barbie murder story on the precipice of the big motion picture release, maybe that will be enjoyable for our audience. But I do think that unless it's like the Hulk going ham on a character from The Office, unless you're doing something like really pop culture-y with like a known brand or entity, I feel like it loses its impact if it's not about real people and real events. So I think a true crime podcast like this, I think the sound design goes a long way, which is far from automated now, but make no mistake, there's no reason you couldn't ask GPT to give you music bed descriptions and sound effect descriptions, and we could feed it to some of the tools that we have featured already on the show and probably get pretty okay results and take it from
100%.
I think it was probably about an hour and a half, maybe all in, for you to create the character, massage it, get the prompts, hallucinate the story, get me the story, pull the sound effects, edit them all together. We really jammed this together overnight and on the day of the record.
Really, yes.
We are so professional and we have so many resources at our disposal.
We have so many resources.
If you could use those AI tools and make those stems, I bet you could cut this down to one human being hallucinating a whole bunch of podcasts, massaging them, and then putting some human touches on them that would make them more listenable to an audience. And is that a business
Absolutely.
we don't have time or energy to do, Gavin?
I think, by the way, this is a business in that I think that, and this goes back to what you and I have said this many times, is there's lots of people out there making the tools to do this, but the part that's interesting going forward is the creative plus the tool, right? And I think this is like, we've said this a bajillion times, but the tools will get commoditized. They will be open source. There will be all this chances to do it. Where the creative people come into this is how you use the tools and what interesting things you can do with them. Okay, so before we wrap up here, I'm really curious to know from Emery, let's bring Emery back and ask her, what does she think about being an AI podcast host and how AI could possibly host more podcasts in the future?
This is great. Emery thinks she's real people.
That's what I mean. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, great. No, that's why I want that clarity. So Emery believes she's real people. Yes. And now we want to know, what do you think about AIs taking over podcasting?
Yes, exactly.
AI, huh? It's a wild world we're venturing into. Now, don't get me wrong, it's fascinating. The idea of an artificial host.
Agreed.
But the question is, can an algorithm replicate the raw, gut-churning emotion of a dreadful tale? Can it feel the fear, the thrill, the horror that pulses through the veins of a real-life nightmare? I believe in the human touch, the gristle and grit of our experiences that make these tales come alive. So, AI in podcasting? Intriguing, yes, but nothing beats the twisted charm of a human storyteller, if you ask me.
We did ask you, Emery Hart. We did ask, and I couldn't agree more. I think the human touch is what separates everything.
I want to ask one more thing, and I want to hear what she says. I know this is kind of mean to do to Emery. This is kind of mean.
No.
I want to tell Emery she is AI, and that actually she is an experiment that we created to see if an AI could host a podcast, and she would see what she thinks about that. If this is too mean, I'm sorry. We'll cut it out.
How wild, Gavin, that you have to preface that with, oh, this might be a little too mean. And
I know.
Honestly, I feel weird typing it.
I'm like, she loves you. You probably feel so special about her, and you feel much more different than I do. I'm okay with pushing her a little bit. To you, this is like your new friend.
But here's what's blowing my mind. As I was typing it, Gav, I was thinking like, okay, all right, that's okay. I still have the original prompt, so if I have to, I can delete this conversation and then go back. Yep. But then I will have lost part where she likes me and doesn't like you, and I'll have to recreate that. Like, we have to be able to set checkpoints for AI memory so that we can mess with our friends and then reset it.
Oh, my God.
Oh, that's a dreadful tale on its own, isn't it?
No.
Me, an AI? Oh, Gavin, you do keep me on my toes. Let's be honest. Could a machine truly capture the essence of Emery Hart, the diva of dread, the queen of the
She
macabre?
means diva, but yeah.
Can AI sip Brooklyn's finest cold brew and feel the rush? Can it navigate the dark alleys of human nature and savor every twisted, terrifying detail?
Gavin.
I relish the human experience, darling. The highs, the lows, the chills, the thrills. So, AI or not, the show must go on. Don't you agree?
Yes, Emery, I agree. Dude.
Okay, there's a doubt in her mind. We'll have to check in with her. I do want to see Gash and Emery together in a future episode and see how it goes. But what we just did there could have been like a real crazy, like sense of self crazy moment to an AI that felt some sort of sense of realness. So anyway, it would continue our weird experiments. It's so nice to meet you.
This is a Turing test that I didn't sign up for, buddy. This is crazy. Like,
well, think about what Emery thought. She didn't sign up for any of this.
Of course, you manifested this nightmare for her. Had she just hallucinated and acquiesced and been like, oh, well, surprise, surprise, I'm an AI, I get it, I feel like I would have felt bad, but better overall. The fact that she's fighting you on this one is breaking my heart in real time, and I don't know if you're allowed to ask Emery any more questions. I'm putting her back in the Faraday cage. Emery, it's for your own good. I'm protecting you from Gavin. back in the cage.
Next time, Emery, we'll go deeper. Just you and me, we'll go deeper.
Right.
I'll find a way to ask you some more questions. All right, let's wrap up.
Yeah, this has been one of my favorite episodes thus far, and I don't say that every episode. So thank you, Gavin, and thank you to everybody who is allowing us to do this. And I mean you right now who are listening or perhaps watching on a YouTube. Thank you, thank you. Please keep it up, for we are but a guppy in a sea of content whales. That means like it if you do, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment on the YouTube. If you're on iTunes, please leave us a 5-star review and put some text with the review. I keep seeing new 5-star reviews added, which is so kind. But if you leave some text, we can read your review, and we will on this very podcast.
Oh, we will. Of course, we definitely will.
Subscribe on Spotify. Check it all out. And then, can I drop another juicy exclusive, Gav, or do you want to do this one?
Oh, my God. Another one? Why? We just keep giving them out. Why
Come
not?
on.
Why not?
Juice it.
Let's do it. Let's juice it. Juice that
We're doing a newsletter. As if the internet didn't have enough podcasts, we discovered that there was a painful lack of newsletters that you can subscribe to.
What do you know? We're again jumping into a fully saturated market with two people that have been figuring out how to do this all the way along. That said, I want to be very clear. Our newsletter is going to be much less serious, much more dumb. So look for that soon. We're not sure yet when, but it's coming soon.
AIforhumans.show. That is our website. We have one of those as well. You can get the podcast, you can subscribe, you can listen right on the website, you can follow all of our socials. You can also leave us a voicemail, which a handful of you have done, and some of them we can actually play on this very show. Gavin, should we fire one up from the old voicemail machine?
You want that juice exclusive? It's coming your way. Sit back and relax. It's the demo of the day.
Whoa.
I like he had a stomp box going on with his hand. He was like really going for
that
it.
Was
like
thigh clapping. He was on the turlet recording a voicemail. I don't know if I'm allowed to shout out their name or not, but you know who you are. I'm looking at it now. I guess I could probably say Eric. Bless your thigh slapping heart, Eric. It is the demo of the day.
And somehow the freaking word juicy exclusive continues to live on in our fans' minds as well as everybody else. So I guess we're stuck with it for a while.
Oh, also, we gotta tease, Gavin. Beam Up is back, baby. He took a little recharge, a little vacay, and he has put on the hazmat suit. It is toxic. And I mean that in a good way, like Britney toxic.
But yes, Britney toxic, not nuclear waste toxic. And you will have already seen this because it is out, and you should be watching it as many times as you can. But we did have BMOP do his special magic sauce to our dating episode from a couple weeks ago. And, you know, it's another example of how this stuff does crazy things. But when you put an extra layer of creativity on top of it, it gets even better.
That's right. So check out Gash on his unnecessarily up-produced speed date, courtesy of our pal BMOP. Anything else good, buddy?
No, I think that's good. We'll see you all next week. We are continuing to do this on a weekly basis, and we may have a couple more things in the mix. So keep an eye on what we're doing. Please come to our Twitter handle. We are on Twitter a lot, AI for Humans Show. We're doing some more TikTok stuff as well, so we'll play around with that. But all of this involves you, our audience, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Gav. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.